Welcome to Chinwag Tuesdays, your passport to a world of language and culture.
Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Chinwag Tuesdays. I'm Amanda, and today's special guest is Frankie, originally from the US, but she's been living in Colombia for 8 years. Thank you so much for joining me today, Frankie.
Thank you so much for having me on. And yeah, my name is Frankie. I'm originally from a small town called Rincon, Georgia, in the US. It only has about 12,000 people. And now I live on the outside of Medellin, which is more 3 or 4 million people. So it's definitely been a big change for me.
Yep, I can understand. My town where I grew up, I think the population is half of yours. It's 6,000 now. Well, the city I live in, India, it's actually not too bad. It's just got 1 million. But still, I live in the most populated country in the world.
I can imagine, going from 6,000 to 1 million is still very big. Rincon is about 25, 30 minutes from Savannah, Georgia, which is a historic and touristic city, but it's still quite small. I think the last time I checked, it's around 150 to 300,000 people, something like that.
Wow. Yeah,
So
pretty decent.
it's bigger, but it's not 1 million.
All right. Yeah. All right. Well, a bit about what you do and how did you end up in Colombia?
Okay, great question. So I am an English teacher and I started teaching English when I moved to Colombia. So how did I get here? It actually started when I was 18. I went to Nicaragua and I really enjoyed my trip there, but I absolutely hated that I couldn't speak with the people because I didn't speak Spanish. So when I got back to the US, I needed to start university and I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. The only thing I knew was I want to be fluent in Spanish. And so I actually declared that as my major. And, if we fast forward a little bit, I graduate with my degree in Spanish and I decide to go to Colombia because I wanted to take a medical interpretation course, but it had been about a year since I finished my studies. So I just wanted to have Spanish fresh on my mind to perform better in the interpretation course. And I came to Colombia for 1 month. I traveled from Bogota to Santa Marta, all different places here in Colombia. And during that time, I met someone who later became my wife. We probably spent about 2 weeks together here, but I did go back to the US to finish that course. But instead of becoming a medical interpreter, I chose to sell everything that I had and move to Colombia. That's how I got here.
Wow. That's incredible. I also sold all of my stuff to move to a different country to get married to someone.
Yeah, it sounds a bit romantic or crazy, but it's worked out so far.
Yeah, that's amazing. Wow. Okay. So why Colombia in the first place? Out of all of the countries you could choose to expose yourself to Spanish or immerse yourself is probably the better word. Why did you choose Colombia?
Ooh, awesome. You're totally right. There are many options. I think the main reason I chose Colombia is because while I was studying Spanish at university, I made a lot of Colombian friends, a lot of the language tutors, not my professors, but the language tutors that would help us were from Colombia. They would talk a lot about Colombia and they encouraged me to go and experience it. So I wanted to see what Colombia was all about.
Oh, incredible. That's awesome. And what was going through your mind when you decided to make that move? So did you get married before returning back to the States or did you get married in Colombia?
So definitely after. I wasn't that crazy. But what was going through my head? When I had that experience in Nicaragua and I decided to major in Spanish, one thing I knew is whenever I finished, I eventually wanted to move to a Spanish-speaking country. I really enjoyed the culture here and being here. So I just didn't know which one. And the fact that I met someone that I thought was really cool, it gave me that push to pursue that dream. And in my heart and mind, I just thought, if this doesn't work out, I'm still going to improve my Spanish. I'm still going to get an amazing cultural experience. And I'm living my dream. I moved to a Spanish-speaking country. So I was pretty much just excited to go pursue my dreams.
Yeah.
What about you?
That's
How did you
incredible.
feel
What
when you
story?
moved to India?
I guess this thought in my mind, because I chose to move here. Like, we had to decide, okay, so we're doing long distance. I came to India for a holiday. While I was on holidays, I met my husband, went back to Australia. We kept in contact. He asked me to come back so we could get to know each other a bit more. So I came back for about a month. We were doing long distance for about almost a year. We were doing long distance. So I made the decision to move for a few reasons. It was cheaper for me to move here. Visa-wise, it was easier for me to come here. But I also just wanted a change. The biggest thing for me was that I just wanted a change. I wanted a change in scenery. I wanted a life change. So I said, you know what? I'll move. And in the lead up, I was like, oh, it'll be fine. I visited India at that point, like, I think 5 times or something. And then as the time got closer and closer, I started to think, what if I don't like it? What happens if I get there and, I struggle, it's really difficult for me. And then I was saying that to my husband, and he had said, well, then I'll just go to Australia then. And I was like, all right, that seems to be an easy solution-ish. And then, I just had said to myself that, what's the worst thing that can happen? I move there and I don't like it. I still have a home to return back to. I still have a home country, right? I'm still a citizen of Australia. I can still go back, and then we'll just have to try and navigate a different future plan. So that was sort of what was going through my mind. But I was really excited. I really, really wanted that fresh start and that new change. And I wasn't planning on working because I couldn't because of my visa restrictions for a couple of years. I was excited not to work. Is it the same in the States that you work from a young age? Like in Australia, you get your first part-time job at like 14.
Yeah. I got my first job at 16. I was a baseball umpire, but I only did 2 games.
Yeah.
And then I told my dad, I really hate this. And he said, you tried? It's okay. You don't have to do it if you don't like it. And then when I was 17, I got my first more permanent job, more than just 2 days. I was like a hostess at a restaurant. So certainly. So I started working from 17, and I did not take a break from work until I moved to Colombia. And it was like a 2-month break, 2 or 3 month break. And then I got a job. That probably was the thing that made me the most nervous. I did have some savings, but it was like, how easy is it going to be for me to get a job? Because, this isn't going to last forever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yes, I was excited just to not work because I got my first job at pretty much 14 and 9 months. And then I moved here at 29. So pretty much half of my life I'd been working in some kind of capacity, either casual or part-time or full-time. So I was really excited to just not work. And then I moved, and then we got married, and a few months later, the pandemic hit. So my initial expectations of life in India were very different because of COVID.
For sure. And COVID here in Colombia was definitely more intense than what the typical American would have experienced at that time.
Okay. Yeah. What was it like there?
So we couldn't go to the market except for like maybe once or twice a week according to the last number of your ID. Yeah. So you would have to make sure on that day you didn't forget anything, because if you did, you were just going to have to push through.
Tough luck.
Yeah. Definitely no exercising in the street, nothing like that.
Yeah.
So I bought some like exercise equipment so I could work out at home. And I went up to the roof and walked around in circles for an hour. Because you got to move. You can't just sit in your house all the time. Yeah. But it was okay. I think
I'm just laughing because I did something similar.
I think the slowdown was good for a lot of us. I try to see the positive in things. And we were definitely in this go culture. And really the city here has a lot of air pollution, but during COVID, it looked completely different because people weren't out in their cars constantly. And so there were some positive
I saw
things
stars
from
for the
that.
first time.
Exactly. Yeah. But I was glad when it was over.
Yeah, we also had a really strict lockdown.
Yes,
Yeah, relatable.
for sure.
Yeah, ours was really strict. The police were beating up people on the streets if they were out without a permit. But we could get online deliveries. So that was the difference, is that we could order stuff online and it would be delivered to our front doors. So we did that a lot. But I would run inside my apartment to exercise myself and my dog, basically. So we had I think I worked out from the front door to the kitchen was 100 meters. And I would run kilometers inside the house a day, or we go up to the rooftop. But at that time it was summer, so it was too hot. So we just stayed inside and I was running inside with the dog.
Yeah, things you would not typically do, but you had to do it for necessity. Yeah. I loved delivery though.
Yes.
That was the thing I looked forward to in the week. We're going to order delivery because you couldn't go out. You couldn't do anything. So that was the little bit of change in your life. And I watched so many series. Insane how many series I watched during COVID.
I read books. I read 150 books that year. I went insane.
This might be interesting for the listeners. What was the best book you read during COVID?
I don't remember if it was during COVID or after. COVID was a few years, but there is one book that has completely stuck with me. And I still think about it randomly now, and it makes me emotional because it's based on a true story. So the author is Australian, but with Polish background. And the story of maybe her grandmother or her great-grandmother who escaped Poland during World War II. I don't want to give too much away, but I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it. And basically there's two timelines. So there's a timeline of the grandmother when she was younger and when she was escaping. And then there's the timeline of the present where the grandmother, she's dying and she wants I think her granddaughter specifically, to go back to Poland to get some closure of what happened. Okay, the author is Kelly Rimmer. The book is called The Things We Cannot Say. I didn't probably explain it very well because I really don't want to give any of it
spoilers.
away because it's just I read a lot of books about World War II during that time. Anyway, that dual storyline. Oh my God, crazy. Yeah, so that was the best book I read during that time. It's probably been one of the best books I've ever read.
Wow, I'll have
fiction.
to add it to the list. In terms of series, the best one I watched, I think, was The Bold Type. Have you seen The Bold Type?
Oh, no, I haven't heard of that one.
It's these three best friends that work together at a magazine office. Really, sometimes they address really complicated topics, but they were able to do it in such a light way where the show never felt too heavy either. And it was still fun, but not completely ignoring some important topics too. Really an amazing series. I don't know why it's not more famous because really it's one of the best I've seen.
Yeah, it's really interesting thinking back because COVID was 5 years ago, right? To think that we can still remember those kind of key things.
Oh, for sure. Because that was the most exciting moment for my life in COVID. Watching a series and ordering delivery. Yeah.
I just remember at the beginning of it where it was just, there was so much uncertainty, so much unknown. And it sounds a bit crazy, but there was a little bit of excitement at the beginning as well because it was so random. What is this thing going on? What's going to happen? And then it started to get serious. And then it was oh shit, okay. This is staying around. Because, we thought, oh, it'll be over in a couple of weeks. It's just a flu.
I thought the same thing.
However many years later.
I was okay, I'll just take a month break from the gym. It's no big deal. And then it was month 2 and I'm no, I gotta do something.
Yeah. We were supposed to have our belated honeymoon because we got married in November. And after our wedding, we did some traveling around India with my family. And then when they went back to Australia, we thought, okay, we'll give it a couple of months and then we'll go to Sri Lanka for our honeymoon. And then that was March, basically when the pandemic started. So then we're okay, let's push it back to June, which will be my 30th birthday. And then June came around and we're this is not ending. So we just canceled the trip. And then I had my 30th birthday in lockdown.
And where did you want to do your honeymoon?
Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka probably is the better pronunciation. Yeah. I still haven't been though. That's definitely on my list of places to go because it's right next to India pretty much. And it's meant to be beautiful. Very tropical. Amazing.
Yeah, I made a friend with someone from Sri Lanka when I was at university. Unfortunately, I don't remember her name anymore. We didn't keep in touch, but she was really, really sweet. I remember that.
Yeah.
Actually, that's interesting story. I think that's one of the cool things about moving abroad and whatnot. You end up having some pretty crazy stories. But basically, my wife and I had sent out wedding invitations and everything to get married in August 2020. Yeah. And so around May of 2020, it was like people aren't even allowed to travel. And all of my friends and family are not in Colombia. I wouldn't say all, but the majority are not here. And then my wife's family and friends are not from Medellin. They're from Cartagena. So they would also have to travel. And we're going to have to cancel the wedding.
Yeah.
And so we had reserved the venue, everything. So we just, at first we thought maybe postpone it. But my visa was expiring and I wanted to quit my job. If I don't have another way to get a visa, I have to stay with this job. And so it was just like, it can't wait anymore. So we actually got married via Zoom online. My friend's dad, has his license to marry people. And he was the one that did it. We were here in this apartment. And funny story, there was my cat and one friend in the room that was watching, and she's Australian.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah. Sarah from Australia. She was the only one physically there. Yeah. Because she couldn't go back to Australia easily during the COVID pandemic.
No, because they were so strict. Australia was so strict with letting people in. Yeah.
She had to get a fake
Even
student
citizens.
visa here in Colombia just to stay. She didn't really want to study, but she had to because she couldn't go back to Australia. It was really a stressful time for her.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. We could talk about this forever. Just all the things that came up, the different stories, right? Now, 8 years. And well, when you think COVID was 5 years ago, but anyway. What was the hardest part of adjusting to life there? How did you get through it?
So I think the initial problem was, like we mentioned a little bit, is what job am I going to do? I don't have a work visa. So you can't actually work legally unless someone wants to support you, right?
Okay.
And so I was applying to some jobs. I found Berlitz, or Berlitz.
Oh, yeah. I've heard of
and
them.
I went to 3 days of training. But then they told me, like, Berlitz actually pays better in Medellin, Bogota, Cali than here in Cartagena, because I moved to Cartagena first. And I just started, like, reading some information, and I realized Berlitz is really good for their students, but they give the bare minimum to their workers. And I didn't want to work for a company like that. So I ended up not going back to the training and kept searching. And so I spent about 2 months in Cartagena, didn't get really good job offers. And my wife was not getting good job offers there either. So we decided, let's move to Medellin and see what happens. Yeah. And so while here, I believe my wife got a job in 3 weeks. So definitely more options here. And then her friend mentioned that there was like a volunteer program that would give me a visa. And it was basically being a co-teacher in Colombian schools. So that's really the start of my English teaching career. And it was a starting place. So that was definitely difficult. And I just think in general, the whole like documents constantly having to update your documents.
Yeah.
And I guess more on a mental and emotional level, it's just knowing that you don't 100% fit in. Sometimes you do feel a little isolated or like an outsider.
Yeah.
That's not a bad thing, but it is a new emotion when you've lived in your own country and culture your whole life.
Yeah, absolutely. What are some things you do to help you stay connected? Would you to like, let's say, American culture or your home culture?
Ooh, okay. I love listening to American country music, especially when I'm driving down a back road. Yes. It just reminds me of home so much.
Yeah.
Yes. And actually, my wife and brother-in-law love country music, so that makes it easier. They're not like, turn it off. You know, they'll listen to it with me, which is nice. What else? In terms of food, I guess sometimes I'll cook like American chili, watch some American football, an American football season. Every Saturday, I want to be supporting the Georgia Bulldogs. I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
My family is. And those are probably the main things, music and American football. Yeah. What about you?
Yeah. Okay. When I lived in Australia, I wasn't a really big fan of Australian TV or Australian movies for that fact either. But when I moved away, I started to watch more because I would feel homesick, and watching those shows helped connect me back to Australia, the language, culture, that sort of thing. Now that I'm teaching Australian English, I kind of make sure I keep up to date with shows and movies so I can recommend them to my students. But there was a series that came out in 2014 or something. It's not a recent series, but it ran for 5 years, called Utopia. And it's been dubbed the Australian version of The Office. So it's that kind of like office politics and stuff. So you can learn about Australian workplace culture, small talking, sarcasm, humour. They use phrasal verbs, slang, idioms, all those sorts of things. So I've been watching that a lot more lately. It's just so funny. I think it's hilarious. So I'll usually watch some kind of Australian show or movie. My mum's actually Italian, born in Australia to Italian parents who immigrated after the war. So I grew up eating a lot of Italian food. So if I'm really feeling homesick, I'll make pasta or like lasagna or something like that. Because for me, that reminds me of home, even though it's Italian. And I'll also eat Vegemite. So I've got my Vegemite t-shirt on.
Actually, yeah.
So I'll also have Vegemite.
Vegemite. I don't know that
Love our
many
Vegemite.
Australian references. I think just the stereotypical things. Yeah. Vegemite, kangaroos. But actually, I have eaten Vegemite. Not my favorite, but I'll eat it.
It's not always everyone's. Yeah. There's definitely an art to the spread.
I believe Sarah, the girl that came to my wedding, she wanted to make me like Vegemite muffins or something. Cupcakes.
Oh, maybe scrolls. They're quite common.
What are they?
You can get Vegemite scrolls, which are just like cinnamon scrolls, but they're savory with Vegemite and cheese.
Maybe that's what it was. Some kind of pastry, but it never happened because COVID made things complicated. And then I've actually eaten kangaroo, even though I've never been to Australia. In Florida, there was this like strange meat market, and my friend bought kangaroo meat and made meatballs.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's even a thing.
Yeah.
Or kangaroo meatballs a thing?
Yeah. So there's this one, or when I lived in Australia, there was one brand that did kangaroo meat. I can't remember what that brand's called now, like Koo or something, KOO. And they would sell kangaroo mince, kangaroo steak, kangaroo like kebab sticks with the little skewers, the skewer sticks with the kebab meat, meatballs. What else did they sell? Cut stir fry mix. They basically, sausages as well. So I used to eat the sausages a lot, but I'm vegetarian now.
Okay. Yes, I understand. Yeah, honestly, I think because it was in meatball form, it was delicious, but I don't think I really noticed like a different flavor or something.
No, I've made it like spaghetti bolognese with it, but just having a piece of the kangaroo steak is not was never really that nice. The sausages weren't too strong, but meatballs and that sort of stuff, because it has the extra flavors and spices, it's usually okay.
Where I come from, Georgia, which is really close to Florida, so we have alligators.
Oh, yes. I've heard so many stories about the alligators there.
Yes. You can go to some restaurants and get gator tail, like fried gator tail, and eat that.
Oh my God. I mean, I've eaten crocodile before, so I shouldn't be like
It's
shocked.
probably quite similar, I imagine. Yes.
Yeah. What does it taste like? Do you have like a comparison?
I mean, it's breaded and fried, so it'll remind you of chicken. But it's
Yeah.
harder. Honestly, chicken is more delicious. We're not
Yes.
buying alligator and eating it at home very often or ever.
Yeah.
My mom never did
Yeah.
that. And some places you can get frog legs, like they say in France or whatever.
Okay.
Have you tried frog legs?
No, I have not. No, I've tried a lot of animals in Australia, though. I feel like Australia's coat of arms has a kangaroo and an emu. And there's this kind of like joke that Australia is probably the only country that eats the animals on their coat of arms.
That's a good one. Interesting. Yeah. But you're vegetarian.
I am, yeah. I used to live in the middle of Australia in the desert in the outback. And we used to have this outdoor barbecue area. It was called the Outback, not the Outback Steakhouse, but the Outback Barbecue or something. And you could buy these meat packs that you would grill yourself on the barbecue. And in the meat packs, it would have like crocodile, kangaroo, emu, and I think camel was in there. So yeah, I tried all of those things.
Do you have camels there?
Yeah, they're a pest. So they're actually considered a pest because they were introduced. So when the British visited Australia and explored before the colonization happened, they came on camels because they had their Afghan cameleers. So then they did their exploration, and then eventually when colonization happened, before cars were invented, they would get around on camels. But then cars came around and they didn't need camels anymore, so they just let them run off into the wild, but they just started breeding. So you can find camels in the wild now. I've seen them in the wild, but they're not natives to Australia, but they are considered a pest because they go searching for water during the hot months. And in the desert parts of Australia, people, like families, own, like, what do you say? Do you say acres or hectares?
I say acres, but in Colombia they say hectares, so use what you want.
Okay. Yeah, so I think we say acres in Australia, but you have all these like acres and acres of land, like hundreds and hundreds. And, you know, they have very, very simple fencing around it. And so when these camels go searching for water, they will go in these big herds looking for water and basically trample these fences and cause all these problems. This is mostly in the Northern Territory part. Yes.
Wow, I didn't realize that. Nice cultural information.
Yeah, I only learnt this from working out there and hearing these stories.
Actually, when I ever play the game like Two Truths and a Lie, I always say like, I've eaten alligator, I've eaten kangaroo, I've eaten camel, because they're all kind of crazy, and see what people can get. But the camel's the lie. I haven't eaten camel.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that alligator, though, tastes like chicken, because that's how I describe crocodile, is that it tastes like chicken but tougher.
That's what it is.
Which basically sounds like alligator.
Yeah, it's very tough. Yeah, not my favorite choice, but I think if you are a meat eater and you get the chance, you should give it a try. See what you think.
Yeah, one of those things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. So what's something about living abroad do you think that's changed you the most as a person?
I didn't initially think of this until you just mentioned it. You know, hectares, acres, feet, meters, these different metric systems. I understand globally the faster these differences, which I think is really good for like social skills and understanding. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess that's the big one, because you're in a new place and some things are unfamiliar. Some things might even seem a bit strange. Yeah. But you learn to accept that those things are just different. Yeah. And it's not that one is right or wrong or better. You just become more accepting of others and more open minded, I believe. Especially as someone coming from the US, I think stereotypically people think we're often very arrogant and I don't know, we're very passionate about our opinions.
Uncultured.
And that has definitely been true about me in times of my life. Maybe still sometimes. I'm working on it. But I think being removed from that and being in a new place where that is not so much the case, I'm able to do some self evaluation and accept the good parts of my culture while also being able to change some things that might not be so great.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like I've learnt so much more patience living in India because Australia is a country where if you turn up to work on time, you're late kind of thing. You know, get to work 5 minutes early. It's a very punctual country, not as punctual as Japan, but it's still pretty punctual. It's a very individualistic culture as well, similar to the US. But I had to learn that things will change last minute and probably will change last minute. So I had to learn how to just be easygoing and have patience with a lot of things because not everything happens according to the way that you want it. Oh, and it's so frustrating sometimes, but I'm working on it.
Yeah, of course. Like the patience is a great thing to learn. But I can also, and of course, this is like our cultural understanding or whatever, but I could definitely see the positives of a culture that respects time and planning as well. But sometimes that can be a higher level of
Yeah.
stress. Yeah. Well, I find people here are a little more relaxed and probably don't have as high of level of stress as a result. I don't even know if this is like true. It's just like something I have realized. But in Spanish, if I directly translated it, they would say pass the time with your friends. Yeah, pass the time doing something. While in English we use spend the time, right? And what else do we use spend with?
Oh,
We use
yeah.
spend with money. You know, it's like something we see with value and we want to be careful how we spend it. We're not just passing it. And maybe that doesn't have anything to do with how people see things, but it could, right? Language can really influence culture or vice versa. Maybe the culture influenced the language. So it's really interesting. Mhm.
Yeah. 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 No, that is. There's just so many things that you don't really realize and you have to move to the country to realize it, right? As I said, I visited before moving here, I came to India. I'd been here 5 times. So when I moved, I thought, oh, it'll be fine. Oh my gosh, there were so many things that were not fine. Just having to just adjust to so many things because being on holidays, and you might have noticed this as well, being on holidays is very different to living in a country long term
Oh, for sure.
or permanently. Yeah, and that was something I was not expecting at all. And no one had really told me because I hadn't really met anyone else who had moved permanently to another country. I'd met other people who had moved to India short term or they were always going back to Australia. They were just in India waiting for their partner's visa or whatever. But no one like myself who moved here permanently. So I didn't know what to expect.
I don't even because they talk about culture shock. Yeah. I don't think I initially experienced that. I think my culture shock maybe came in more recent years, maybe year 5 or 6,
Yeah.
where
Yeah. Okay.
I just realized like I love being here, but there are just some parts that I don't fit in. Yeah. Like I go to a
Yeah.
party
Yeah.
and maybe the first 2 hours I know a lot of the songs and everything. But you know, when it's longer, maybe there's other music being played and things like this, and everyone's singing, and I don't know this music. And it's fine when it's just one or
Yeah.
two, but when it's 2 hours of songs you don't know, unfortunately, it
Yeah.
actually gets a little isolating and boring. Yeah. And sometimes
Yeah.
I fall asleep,
Yeah.
and that's not something I would do
Yeah.
back home. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but nonetheless, it's so nice to be here. And I do have amazing friends, family here that make me feel loved and special, even though I'm not Colombian.
Yeah. I think that's a really big part of thrive. Is probably the best word to say here. The best way to thrive in a different country is that support you have around you.
Oh, for sure. I will say this though, a lot of people are like, if you want to be fluent, get a boyfriend or girlfriend. It can help. Yeah. But at some point, I've realized that I can still be quite dependent on my partner to handle some situations for me
It's hard.
because I just know she can do it more easily than I can. Not that I can do it. I know I can, but it's her culture.
Yeah.
She can do it more
Yeah.
politely, maybe we could say, where sometimes when you learn the language, those things are a
Yeah.
little trickier. Yeah, because you're just trying to find the words and not
Yeah.
necessarily do it in the most correct way, if that makes sense. But that's not a good thing, you know? If I were single here, I would have to face those things on my own. And I do think it would help me develop my language skills even more. Maybe I should just stop depending so much and be braver.
Oh, it's so hard. My husband and I speak English to each other because that's the language we established our relationship with. So it is very hard for us to make that switch into Hindi, even though I'm trying to learn it. And people think because my husband is Indian, I must be fluent. But it is so hard to try and shift. Do you speak to your wife in Spanish?
Yes.
Or English? Oh, I was just going to say, it'd be like you trying to shift into English and then it'd just be really tricky to hold that.
It is.
But yeah, the American show.
Yeah, it really is tricky. Yeah, no, what I was saying is I even watch like American TV in Spanish.
Yeah.
Like every outside of work,
Yeah.
my life is in Spanish unless I'm speaking with my friends and family back home. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, that switch is hard. It really is. And really she'll just be like, "No. Talk to me in Spanish."
Yeah, it's so tricky. But one thing I think I struggled with the most was when I didn't know, like I'm still intermediate. I'm not advanced or anything, but I know enough that I can do most things. But oh my God, the loss of independence because I couldn't communicate. I couldn't even answer the door. I couldn't answer my phone because I didn't know the language. And I relied so much on my husband and I felt useless. And that was another thing I hadn't really prepared for was the language difficulties. It was so, so tough. And now it's not too bad. Sometimes I do take advantage of it if I'm like, oh, I can't really think of that right now. Can you handle it for me? Can you please do this? Because I don't want to.
No, totally. Because it is not that we can't do it, but it is just so much easier for them. But there are situations where you really do have to do it yourself. And so I get that you know, immigrants having to go to the doctor, to the bank, all these things and speak English and it's not their native language. It can be a challenge. I remember one time
Yeah, absolutely.
I was at the hospital. I needed an IV, but everything was finished and the doctor used some expression that I had never heard before. Yeah. And basically, she was telling me I could go home. But I didn't know that's what that expression meant. So I waited there for an extra hour.
Yeah.
And then she came back
Oh, goodness.
and was like, I told you could go home. And I'm like, oh, okay. So like those things can happen because sometimes if she would have just said like, go home, I would have understood that language, but I didn't know the expression. And that can be really tricky when we're not familiar with
Yeah.
those words. Yeah. And also I was at the eye doctor just last week. I was pretty much able to understand everything, answer all his questions. But at the very end, he was telling me to get a slip of paper to do like the next step. But it wasn't clear to me like the process. So I asked and tried to confirm. But he still spoke just as fast in the exact same way. Like I was like, okay,
With the same vocabulary.
I guess I'll just go figure it out. Yeah. And I did. But sometimes, that doubt is still there. Things are not always 100% sure. And I would say my Spanish is like C1 level. It's very advanced. And I can still feel uncomfortable sometimes.
Yeah. I guess that kind of leads into the next question, what we've been talking about, sometimes feeling left out or maybe those kind of difficulties. So for migrants who do feel torn between two cultures, what is one mindset shift or daily habit that really helped you feel at home?
This is so important. And I think the first step is just accepting that that's okay. It's actually normal and you're a better and stronger person because of it. Yeah. Because you are who you are, where you grew up, what feels familiar to you, that culture, you should never be ashamed of it. I would actually say embrace it, share it with people. Please don't hide those parts of you that are so beautiful, and realize that you will never assimilate 100%. And that is okay. And that doesn't mean ignore the local culture and don't try to fit in ways that are appropriate, but know that you don't have to be someone you're not. That you are beautiful just the way you are.
Yes. Oh, I love that. That's so special. But because you can lose yourself, can't you? Especially if you are trying to fit in. So I think that's a really big struggle for a lot of migrants when they move to a different country, especially I think if you think of them going to a country like Australia or even the States, where maybe people might feel that their culture is maybe a bit too strong for those kind of Western individualistic cultures. But I think what you said is so sweet, that you don't have to hide it. You shouldn't have to hide it. It's just trying to find a balance between the things that you adapt to or change and the things that you keep and continue from your own culture and country, and trying to find that balance of both. And it takes time. It takes time to figure things out. I've interviewed people before who, an Indian guy actually, he was vegetarian here in India, moved to Australia, and then felt like he kind of had to start eating meat and drinking alcohol because that's what everyone around him did. And he gave the advice that you don't have to change yourself. People will accept you for who you are. And you shouldn't have to change those parts of yourself, but you might have to figure that out for yourself in one way or another.
Especially the right people. You might find some xenophobic, crazy people who think their culture and way of life is superior. But those aren't the people you want to hang out with. Roll your eyes and walk away. Yeah. Go find your community.
Exactly. And they do exist, and they will.
Your people.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I would say, especially if you're trying to improve your English, you're trying to improve your cultural experience, don't go to that country and only hang out with people that speak your native language or that are from your country.
100%.
Because you end up not actually having that experience that you wanted. And your English really will not improve that much because you're only using it when you have to. And I would actually really
Yeah.
encourage people, go make friends with the local people so that you really have to
Yeah.
get in there,
Yeah.
use English.
Yeah. Yeah. Not even just the local people, though, because if you think of multicultural countries like the States and Australia, is that finding other English speakers, but they could be English speakers from Europe or English speakers from Asia or wherever it is, but finding other people to speak English with. And again, like you said, not kind of sticking to your own community, because then you're not having that cultural experience either. And again, it goes back to finding that balance between the two.
Oh, sure, yeah. Not just limited to the local people, but people you're going to
Yeah.
actually practice English with. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think, Amanda,
definitely.
that's one of the most beautiful things about countries like the US and Australia is there has been so much immigration of people from so many different countries and backgrounds and cultures. And really, you can go out to the bar and meet 10 different people from different countries and become friends with
Yes.
them. And
Yeah.
if you really embrace that, you can learn so much about culture and the world.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I agree. All right. So, a bit of a fun one to finish
Okay.
up. What assumptions do you have about Australia besides Vegemite and kangaroos? I'll tell you if you're right or not.
Another assumption. Well, from the Australian friends that I've had, it seems like you guys like a good party. Yes.
Well, apparently, Australia has one of the highest usages, is that the right word? The highest cocaine usage in the
Ooh.
world.
And this is Colombia.
It's pretty up there. I know, right? I had this conversation with a Colombian student. Yeah, so apparently Australia's cocaine usage is quite high.
But I don't think
From
the
reports I read
Australian friends
recently.
I've made dabble into that too much. But maybe we just didn't talk about it.
No, we do love a good party though. Knockoff drinks, so your drinks after work, things like that. Yeah, going for Friday night drinks after work, going to the local pub or the club or whatever straight after work. Love a good party. Sunday sessions, Sunday afternoon parties.
Like a brunch kind of thing?
Yeah. Yeah, it would be a brunch, but with alcohol. Yeah.
Nice.
We give it a nickname. So a Sunday session, so a drinking session on a Sunday, and we call it a Sunday sesh. Sesh being short for
A
session.
Sunday sesh, and it's basically like an afternoon party.
It usually starts off about brunch and you drink all the way into the afternoon.
Okay, I understand. Yes. Which is actually quite what we do at a typical brunch. Just the most common is mimosas. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That's something I kind of miss. Brunch culture. I will occasionally throw a brunch. But not all that often.
Yeah.
I do love a good brunch or Sunday
Yeah.
sesh.
Yeah. Yeah. I miss breakfast culture. Breakfast culture is it's non-existent here because it's just a late starting country. So I'm used to like meeting friends for breakfast at 8 or 9 in the morning. And yeah, I would go for a walk with a friend early morning, like 6 or 7, then we'd have breakfast afterwards. But here, places don't open till 10 or 11.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's much later. No, breakfast culture is fun. I wouldn't say there's a big breakfast culture here, but they eat big breakfasts. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's pretty light here, I think. Yeah. Anyway, any other assumptions?
Other assumptions of Australia. I guess just thinking, when I think Australia, I think like the beach and surfing, that kind of thing. The reef. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. I think I can't remember the exact statistic now, but I don't want to say it because it's probably going to be wrong because I can't remember the exact number. Majority of people living in Australia live on the coast, basically, coastline, because it's an island country. So around, if you think about the whole kind of size of Australia, yeah, majority of people do live on the coastline. So yes, beaches are very common. playing sports on the beach. So beach footy, beach cricket, just like casual like games between friends, taking a soccer ball down there and kicking a soccer ball with your friends. So yeah, those assumptions actually are correct, I would say. Yeah, beaches. Reef though, the reef is not something that is down the whole coastline. That really only starts a bit above Brisbane. There's one area, I think that's where the bottom of the Great Barrier Reef starts, and then it goes up to far north Queensland, but it's not something that goes the whole way down.
Okay. So it's not everywhere. Uh-huh. Oh, and I guess I think
Oh, I couldn't tell you about WA.
I guess I think rugby.
Oh, it depends what you mean by rugby, because there's AFL, which is Australian football. Then you have rugby league. And so depending on the followers, if people follow AFL, they'll call that footy. And then you have rugby league, which is also known as just league. However, if you're a follower of that, you would call that footy. And then you've got rugby union, which people just call rugby.
Okay. So would footy be football like soccer, or it's a different sport?
Oh, we call it soccer.
You do call it soccer.
Yeah, we actually got that from Americans. Yeah,
I think I watched a YouTube
So we
video.
don't have to worry about that being
I
footy.
watched a YouTube video about this where there was one guy faking to be Australian and everyone else was Australian or something like this. And they were trying to figure out who were the fake ones. Yeah. And this British guy called soccer football. And they were like, nah, you're out.
Thanks, the dude. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, dead giveaway.
Yeah. But I like watching those types of videos. They're funny. Yeah.
Yeah, they are. I like that. All right. So, Frankie, how can people contact you if they want to learn more?
Okay.
Where are your points of contact?
Of course. Yeah. So you can contact me on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok at Peach Teach English, or you can visit my website, peachteachenglish.com. I have some fun communities there. Some are free, or you can sign up for my classes. I'd love to talk to you guys.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'll put all of those details in the episode description. But thank you so much for coming today, Frankie. Well, tonight for me, morning for you. Thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It was an absolute pleasure, and we'll be in touch. Bye.